Hey homeschoolers, this is Jim Pence with See the Light, and today we're talking about the selection tool. Well, I'm glad you joined us today. If my voice sounds strange and I have to turn away and cough a bit, you'll understand. It is allergy season in North Texas, and so I'm feeling the allergies big time today. So bear with me, and we're going to talk about another really cool characteristic of digital art apps. Now, the selection tool allows you to do a lot of really interesting things drawing. But one thing that I want to point out is that there are differences between all of the different art apps and the different features that they have. And it seems to me that the selection tools really vary from app to app. So I'm going to be using Procreate. I'm working on an iPad, and Procreate only works on iPad. But there are other very good apps out there, and most of them have some kind of selection feature. They may not have quite the ability that you'll see with some of the things I'm going to do here, but most of them will at least accomplish some of the same things. So, and when we start doing projects down the line, then I will show you how to do some of the things in the different apps in case you're not working with Procreate. But we're going to start out here, and what I want to do in this session is just very briefly show you some of the potential and some of the things that you can do with a very robust selection tool. All right, now in Procreate, selection tool, there are a lot of different things you can do, and I'm just going to walk through some of them. I've got this little symmetry drawing that I did a while back, and I'm going to show you one aspect of selection, and that is very simply selecting the contents of a layer. Now, all three of these you'll see have under the layer name or number, they have the word assisted, and that's because I have the symmetry feature still turned on. But I'm going to change that. I'm going to turn that off for layer 2, which is the red layer. Now, let's say I wanted to come in and change some things in this layer. Well, again, there are other ways that I can do this, and you're going to see as we work, there are some overlaps in some of the things that you can do. But let's say I wanted to change the color of this layer's contents to something different. I could do an alpha lock. That's one way to do it. Another way I could do it is to come over and hit select. And what that's going to do, it's going to select the contents of that layer. And so I can come in, and I'm going to make sure I have an airbrush on here. And I do. Got my soft airbrush, which is something I like to draw with a lot. And let's see. I have kind of a lavender color up right now. Let's say I wanted to turn this more of an orange. So let's come in here and, well, I'm going to change that because the contrast isn't great. And I'm not really trying to produce artwork here. Let's change it to green because it'll show up a little bit better. And now I can come in and I can change the contents of the layer. Now, like I said, this would also work with alpha lock, which we learned about in a previous video, or lock transparency. But this is one way that you can do it, by selecting the contents of a particular layer. Well, let's go back to the gallery here. I'm going to deselect that and choose one of my other things to, or my other works to experiment with. Okay, well, I have this one that I did, and it actually shows up in the opening credits for the video. I was just trying to do a little scenic shot with a couple different kinds of brushes, and we'll talk about brushes in another video. But if you'll notice, pull up the layers. I've got quite a few different layers here. I've got a layer for the kind of the foreground trees. I've got a layer for the dirt color. See, if I turn that off, it doesn't look nearly as brown. I've got a layer for my pine tree, a big pine tree, which you can't see. But let me move this here. Let me pull that over. If I turn that off, then that pine tree disappears. Let me turn it back on. Okay, well, let's say that I wanted to play around with composition a little bit, and I wanted to kind of check out different ways of using that pine tree that I've drawn in. Well, what I could do is I can go to my selection tool, and I can do a freehand selection. The freehand selection is going to let me basically draw a circle around excuse me, that pine tree. And then I use another tool called the transform tool. Oops, that didn't work the way I wanted it to. Let's try that again. Okay, let's make sure I'm on the right layer. That was part of the problem. I wasn't. You got to make sure you're drawing on the correct layer, or it's not going to work for you. So let's try that again. I'm going to turn layer on here, and I'm in freehand, and I'm just going to sketch around that pine tree. And now I'm going to use the transform tool. And what you'll notice is that we've got a little box around the tree. So I can now, let's say I wanted to make it really big. Wow, that's pretty cool. I can do that. Let's say I wanted to minimize it more. I could do that. There are all sorts of things. Let's say I wanted to move it entirely. Well, it wouldn't work real well because I don't have the entire tree drawn, so it'd look kind of funny. But the select tool gives me the option of moving and changing elements in my picture. Let's turn off transform and select. And let's say I wanted to change that mountain in the background. Well, let's make sure I'm on the right layer. So let's get on the mountain layer. And I think in this case, I'm going to select the contents of the layer. Oops, I did that wrong. I'm going to come back here. And now I'm going to select the contents of that layer. And now I'll turn on the transform tool. And now I can move my mountain around. And as you can see, I've got another layer of mountain there. I can shift it around. I can do whatever I want to. Let's say I played with it and I just really don't like what I've done, but I'm trying to figure out how to get it back where it was. Over here, you just hit reset, and it's going to put it back. So that's something else that you can do with Select. You can actually use it to edit your drawing as you're working. Now let's go to another picture I've got, and okay, this was one I used the pastel brush to kind of get a pastel feeling and feel like I was drawing with chalk. let's check out my layers. I don't have a lot of layers on this one, but that black mountain in front is on a layer itself. So, and then also the distant mountains are on a layer. So if I wanted to play with those distant mountains a bit, again, I can select the contents of that layer, and then I can do other things. And again, some of these things are things we haven't learned about yet, but let's say we wanted to well, that's not a good color. Always check your color before you start to draw. Yeah, orange isn't great either. But let's say I wanted to add maybe a very, very light purple to it. And I wanted to come in. Whoops, it's too big. Shrink it down. Say I wanted to fade these out a little bit more. Then I can come in and I can work with that layer, make those move more into the background. If I want to shrink them or move them around, you can see here I didn't really draw anything over there because it was not something that was going to be visible. But let's say I wanted to maybe make them a little bit more stark or dramatic. Now I would have to go back in here again and, whoops, turned off selection, so that lets it draw everywhere. And, you know, I kind of like how it's actually kind of broken up there. Sorry about that. It's kind of broken up, almost looks like pine trees on top. So I could come back in and tweak and play with that and do all sorts of different things. So, whoops. Don't want to do that either. That's, again, the thing I love so much about digital art is that you can, you make a mistake and you can just hit undo and just let you have a great deal of flexibility. Okay, so in fact, I really didn't like the change I'd made there, so I'm going to just hit undo and return it to what it was. So, in fact, I'll take it a step further back and leave it the way I had it in the first place. Okay, so that's something else that you can do with Select. And I'm going to just start a new canvas here to give you a feel for some other things that you might be able to do that are available in Procreate. And again, it depends on what app you have as to what specifics that you can do with some of these. But if we go back to the selection tool down at the bottom, you'll see automatic, freehand, rectangle, and ellipse. Well, what if I chose rectangle and started just drawing? Shrink this down a little bit. Just started drawing rectangles. And I've got, you can't really see a whole lot aside from the little gray lines that show you what you're not drawing on. Okay, but if I pull in that color there, then I've got what might look like a skyline. And if I bring that back up, then you'll see at the very bottom, 3 from the left, there's a word invert, and I hit that, and now my skyline isn't selected, it's the sky. So let's say I wanted to draw in a blue sky, and see what brush, got my airbrush on, it's kind of a purpley sky there, make it a little bit more blue. Nope, now it's orange. I don't want orange. Now, if I was doing a sunset, I'd like orange, but I'm doing a sunset. Okay, so I can come in. Oops, that's too small. Let me bring that up bigger, turn down the opacity, and now I can come in and draw maybe a kind of a dusky sky. Turn that opacity up a little bit. And then I can go back, turn that all off again, turn selection back on, still have it set at rectangle. And let's say I came in here and drew another rectangle. Now, if I want to just draw one rectangle, I can do that, or I can just draw another one on top of it, and it's going to keep adding to what I already have. And so I can have a secondary skyline, and if I bring in dark color, I can have my secondary skyline, and then I can, if I want to, begin to shape and add detail using the same selection technique, just selecting smaller bits. And so I can actually build a picture just using the select tool. So that's another thing that you can do with it. And clear this layer. Another part of the select tool is ellipse, and that will ellipse. I did that wrong. All right, turn it off again, turn it back on. There we go. So I can draw an ellipse, and if I want to come in here, I can draw another one. Let's change colors. Okay, and you can just go on and on. And if I've done something and I want to sculpt it, I can hit this remove button if it will let me, which it will not. Oh, it's not letting me. Very strange. All right, I'm just going to clear that selection. And there are other options. And again, I don't want this to turn into a Procreate demo. I just wanted you to see what can be done with selections. And that's going to complete our introduction into digital art. And then we're going to start focusing on specific projects. And again, what I'm doing here is barely scratching the surface. It's not exhaustive by any stretch of the imagination, just enough to get us started. And I'm going to then show you how you can create some cool works of art, and actually in the process of doing that, kind of unleash your own creativity, because once you see how this works, then there's really no limit to what you can do. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you will take the time to like this video and subscribe to our channel, and then be sure and come back next time for another episode in Adventures in Digital Art. I'm Jim Pence with See the Light, and thanks for watching.